Hi there. The Belt and Road Initiative, with its roots in history and an eye on the future, has become a massive platform for cooperation and engine of growth. China reiterates that the purpose of the initiative is economic cooperation rather than a geopolitical or military alliance. But criticism and doubt persist. As the world leaders convene in Beijing for the second Belt and Road Forum, what can we learn about the progress and prospects of the global infrastructure initiative? How can qualitative development be boosted in BRI cooperation? And what will it take to satisfy the critics? To discuss these issues and more, I'm very happy to be joined in the Beijing studio by Zhou Rui, chairman of the Bridge Tank, Zong Ahmed Khan, visiting fellow at the Belt and Road Strategy Institute of Tsinghua University, and Liu Qian, associate professor from the Belt and Road School of Beijing Normal University. We will also be joined via satellite by Vladimir Yakunin, chairman of the supervisory board of the Dialogue of Civilizations Research Institute in Moscow. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to our discussion here. First of all, your impression about the keynote presentation that Xi Jinping delivered at the opening ceremony of the second forum, BRI. What do you think of the major points, Dr. Liu?
The voice is really loud for the President Xi for the Belt and Road Forum. It's my pleasure that yesterday I also attended the thematic forum for the Belt and Road Forum yesterday on the think tank exchanges. And I can feel that atmosphere is very supportive, and everybody are talking about the Belt and Road. So I should say it's very successful. So today, this morning, we all listened to the President Xi's speech, and from that we can learn several points. For example, like President Xi delivered 5 measures for the deepening opening up like the intellectual property protection, like the effectively involving in the macroeconomic policies, and also for the opening up policies, etc. So I think it's time we should concentrate more on soft infrastructure. I think all of this belongs to soft infrastructure.
Good beginning for a nice brainstorming, Dr. Liu. Congratulations, Zong. I'm afraid you'll focus on CPEC, or you'll show great interest on a wide range of issues concerning BRI this time around.
Yes. Well, if I may also add to what Dr. Liu said, and taking forward my specific interest on CPEC, I think what's most fascinating about the Second Belt and Road Forum and the way even CPEC has emerged from phase 1 to phase 2 is that we're talking about the Green Belt and Road Initiative. We're talking about stability, a stable economic environment. We're talking about sustainability. We are talking about people along the Belt and Road. We're talking about cultural exchanges, education, vocational training. So from the first BRF, which was also an immense success, the conversation was more about infrastructure, energy, the basic requirements that countries were starved for. And now that to a certain degree, and if I may say to a great degree, that idea has been successful, now we are coming to the second phase, to utilize that infrastructure and to say that it's not just immediate job creation, it's sustainability for lives. And I think this is the biggest achievement and the required leadership that Eurasia and other parts of the world have been seeking.
In Zong, most of the Chinese observers who follow the process of CPEC may have noticed the recent killings of a dozen or so people in Baluchistan, yes, where Gwadar port is located. What do you think of our concerns about the political uncertainty in your country? Or do you think with the newly elected president and his vision for BRI, particularly the deep-rooted friendship between our two countries, that could be easily brushed aside and look forward to something positive?
You know, Mr. Roy, I think there's no need to brush aside. Everything that is a part of Pakistan is something that we are holistically looking at. If we brush it aside, we don't address it. And that is something we cannot afford to do. If you look at the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor itself, the 22 projects that are being implemented successfully, even after the government transition, after the new Prime Minister's election, we see that in and of itself, the scope of BRI in Pakistan as CPEC has been enhanced. And on the same side, simultaneously, if we look at those things, those factors that could harm perceptions or could sabotage to some extent, those factors have been reducing. The killings last week were unfortunate, but if we look at the numbers of incidents, they have reduced dramatically for the past 7 years, and especially because Pakistan, with China's help, is focusing on eradicating certain elements that could sabotage in the future.
I wouldn't go back to the bloody blast that killed well over 300 people in your neighboring country of Sri Lanka, because we'll talk about the rosy picture of a BRI on this festive occasion of the second forum. So Ray, I wouldn't also talk about the fire that destroyed the Notre Dame Cathedral. What do you think of the differences, if any, between the first forum and the second BRI? Particularly with regard to the high-quality development.
Yeah, I was about to say, if there's one word, it's high quality. So you take away my answer. And this one word, what is important is that it was articulated across different layers and perspectives. That's sustainable projects, that's sustainable renewable energies, that's job creation that lasts over the realization of the infrastructure. And what I think matters most is the understanding that large SOEs should go towards the smaller companies, the medium companies from China, but also from other countries, which are where the job creation, the opportunity of job creation and know-how transfer lies. And I think this addresses the critics already, especially the critics of reciprocity, the critic of joint ownership about the initiative. I think it's an important qualitative process. This was in the words of the President's speech, but this was in the words of each and every official since the previous sub-forums that prepared today's forum.
China has enough reasons to be proud of our infrastructure investment along stretches of BRI. However, we have to do more to brush suspicions concerning, for example, the debt trap, as well as why it's the Chinese enterprises that benefit most from our investment in the infrastructure. But let me cross over to Mr. Vladimir Yakunin in Moscow, because there is this chronic issue about whether the Eurasian Economic Union and the Belt and Road Initiative could be put together in the same basket. Russian President Vladimir Putin, in fact, is invited to address the Belt and Road Forum again. How do you view Putin's participation in both the first and the second forums? What can you tell us about Russia's participation in the Belt and Road Initiative since the first forum? Vladimir?
Well, first of all, I suppose this is absolutely true to say that participation of President Putin in this forum is the reflection of the geostrategy and geopolitics of both countries, Russia and China, of course. I suppose this is not necessary to reflect the specific relations established between two leaders. Now we are talking absolutely pragmatically. And from this point of view, I suppose that the Belt and Road Initiative should be read much wider than usually experts and politicians are trying to describe it. Because now, to my mind, the entire world is seeking some new ideas concerning the future model of social and economic global development. Participation of Mr. Putin in Beijing Forum reflects that both our leaders, they are also deeply involved in new structuring of the relations between two countries in the global context, of course.
President Xi and Putin signed a joint declaration on cooperation in linking the construction of the Silk Road Economic Belt and the Eurasian Economic Union in May 2015. What parallels can be drawn between the two frameworks? And how can China and Russia tap more economic potential under the BRI-EA-EU alignment?
I suppose this is obvious that the signing of this agreement in May 2015 was a great step forward in developing some special relations, pragmatic relations between two countries. Of course, on the surface we are talking about the development or merging of Belt and Road Initiative and Euro-Asian Economic Union, but practically we are talking about principally new model of geo-economic and geopolitical collaboration.
Central Asia has assumed an important role in the BRI blueprint and has been actively participating, but warnings such as economic encroachment continue. What's your take on the criticism, and how does Russia perceive China's presence in the 5 former Soviet republics of Central Asia?
It is my personal opinion that this kind of sentiments, you know, they are kind of reflection of the previous political mentality. Of course, there are a lot of difficult issues in construction of new relations, international relations, and it is obvious that small countries, small people, they are always concerned about their practical intentions and power of much greater neighbor. But I suppose this is reminiscence of the Cold War mentality. Now we observe that the world is changing. The entire structure of global politics and global economy are changing either. And from this point of view, I suppose it is very important that the leaders of China, specialists, they are always stating that it is for the countries to decide which way of cooperation, what scale of this cooperation the particular countries would like to implement. It is not forceful, you know, on the part of China to persuade the country to accept loans or, you know, to do something. It should be in the general planning, state planning of the particular countries, what amount, what volume of this cooperation is necessary for the particular economy and for the particular people.
Thank you. That's Vladimir Yakunin. Let's look at a major issue that has really worried President Trump. Italy recently became the first G7 country and developed country to sign up to the BRI. Zhou, what does that mean to President Emmanuel Macron? What does Italy's entry mean for the initiative, and what consequences will Italy's endorsement have for other members of G7? Zhou.
First of all, I want to be clear. You mentioned about Mr. Trump. I think France is, till today, taking decisions irrespective of the American position. France is a sovereign country and is very keen to keep its sovereignty in international relations. But France, and especially the current government of Emmanuel Macron, is also very keen to use the current changes in the world economy and in the world to renew the European Union, to have a kind of a renaissance. In that respect, I think the Belt and Road Initiative is rightly perceived as an important initiative, not just an economic one, but also an attempt to contribute or remodel, reshuffle the global economy and the global governance. So Mr. Macron is very attentive to that. He would have preferred that there's a coordinated discussion, but sometimes you don't know what you want in politics. But I think he rightly used the signing of Italy with the Belt and Road as a way to trigger a massive innovation, which was to convey Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Juncker to Paris, and then kind of have the two discussions converge, the bilateral discussions and the EU multilateral with China discussion converge. And that's a positive move if we want a lasting outcome, I think.
Thank you so much. You're watching Dialogue with Dr. Liu Qian, Dr. Zhong, and Mr. Zhou Rui. We're also talking to Vladimir Yakunin, focusing on what's going on at the second BRI forum in Beijing. particularly the issue of high-quality development. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. So, let's look at Italy. The French people are always proud of enjoying the spirit of the Fifth Republic, heritage of de Gaulle, meaning very much independent from its alliance of the Atlantic Ocean. What does that mean for you who have long observed the development of BRI, because the United States keeps a watchful eye on this?
Well, I think that we've reached a point, the biggest success of China's own growth and increasing, I would say, goodwill in the world is that it's become the most important country for many nations to understand the relationship with. So for France and many other countries to realize that how they posture themselves with China in terms of their own self-interest, in terms of their own national goals, their own economic goals that they have, and to understand that the result of a relationship that's independent of other influences with China can be of benefit to them. So I think it's not just France, but many other countries that feel that their policy towards China, towards Pakistan, towards other nations has to be independent if they are to determine their own interests.
Everybody is studying the impact of a Brexit. The United Kingdom is leaving continental Europe, and President Donald Trump will soon visit London between June the 3rd and the 5th to see Queen Elizabeth. Having said this, we have to remind our guest speakers that it is UK that first joined the AIIB. This time around, it's Italy that signs up for BRI. Does that indicate that European Union, which is already fragile, will fall apart, particularly on the issue of BRI?
That's a very good question. I think it's a good time for Europe to participate, the Belt and Road, but in case that American will play an important part in the involvement. Because we all know that the Americans are doing this kind of thing, like the hyper against the Belt and Road. So actually, they voting all the resources to give us threat misery to some countries don't follow his path. So I think maybe Italy also face this misery threat. So I think it doesn't matter because actually China and the U.S. have different culture, and after the Second World War, U.S. has dominated the whole world, Western world until now. So that's why Europeans are afraid of a little bit for the American participation, the involvement. I think from our side, we should pay attention to why there are some people, they are hyper against the Belt and Road, because they don't know about it very well.
Zhou Rui, some in the West go as far as to compare BRI to the Marshall Plan that the United States introduced in the wake of the Second World War to help Europe reconstruct the war-torn continent. And that also includes the UK, of course. So do you think this is a feasible parallel comparison, or is this a far-fetched an approach by some of those who think that the BRI is a conspiracy theory to replace the current world order?
Well, you know, my personal view is that the BRI is much more than the Marshall Plan. It's like somehow a recreation of the UN with all its departments, with its financial wing, with its arenas for expression, with its infrastructure and projects department, and also with its cultural exchanges. But getting back to Europe survived all initiatives, and I don't think that Europe is fragile, and I think that Europe as a whole wants to embrace cooperations with others on its own terms, on its own negotiated terms. So for Europeans, it doesn't matter really what the Belt and Road should be compared to, but what it is in the details. And I think that this second forum has given details, has given some practical tools, and I'm hopeful that European countries and the EU will advance, and that we'll see advancements in the third forum to come.
Zong, China is making heavy investment in ports of Mediterranean countries such as Greece and Italy. At the same time, Premier Li Keqiang attended the annual event of 16 plus 1. It's also part of the Belt and Road Initiative concerning, economic integration with the Central and Eastern European countries. Therefore, politicians and policymakers in Brussels have concerns that perhaps China aims to divide and rule, to weaken the solidarity of the European Union. That's, of course, a nonsense from the Chinese perspective. Your observation, please.
May I give a third-party perspective, maybe? Well, I would also, I think, the fact that the difference is actually a difference in attitude, mentality, culture. When we, for example, when Western countries or many other countries compare the Belt and Road Initiative with the Marshall Plan, the assumption is that any such proposition should be very strictly defined and determined. But actually the BRI is about consent. It's about initiating an idea, and then the other partner country can be a part of it to determine what is good for them. It's flexible. And similarly, when you look at any kind of reaction by European Union or certain countries that seem to be threatened by the initiative, it's primarily because they don't understand the concept as well. And maybe it's partially because this region, maybe on some level, but my understanding is, was on the peripheries of the European region. It was to some extent, no, I wouldn't say neglected, but detached from the Central European Union. And because of that, when China reached out to European Union, just as you mentioned the Central Asian republics also, then it seems as if they are trying to determine or emerge, China is trying to emerge as the bigger brother or the more significant player or power for that particular region. But this is, I think, what the European Union should realize is that that's not the intention. The intention is simply because China recognizes that there are infrastructure, basic requirements that countries need to fulfill in order to have overall prosperity. So I feel like it's more of a cultural difference that leads to any kind of mistrust or misperceptions on both sides.
Last time, the first forum of BRI, we saw absence of two heavyweight players. One was India, the other Singapore. This time around, we are very happy that Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong came over, but Prime Minister Modi refused to come. What do you think of, say, the Indian concerns about the CPEC? They've long complained that, Kashmir is a controversial territory for India. Therefore, the label of CPEC has aroused strong nationalistic sentiments from the Indian media. They are so angry these years. What do you want to say to your Indian neighbors?
My Indian brothers. Well, I would ask firstly the question, is India not a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? SCO. Pakistan is also a member of the SCO. And the SCO is compatible with the BRI, in essence. India is also a member of the AIIB. Again, an initiative compatible with the BRI. The point is that many nations have differences, but the differences have to be in one part of our imagination. The other aspect is we should look for opportunities to be on the same platform to talk about points where we can agree and actually make a difference for people. India's opposition to the BRI, I feel, is not, it doesn't make as much sense, because unless India is part of that platform, which has been created because of Chinese goodwill, there are so many other countries with such big differences that are probably even almost in the state of war. They are participating in the Belt and Road Initiative because they realize that the future is common, that the goals, that we have much more in common than we choose to recognize. So I think what India should consider is that if there is a solution to the current problems, then we are closer to that solution if we choose to continue dialogue, if we choose to support any initiative or any platform that gives us that space to discuss how to work together.
Liu Chen, we are clearly aware from the Chinese perspective that we need to introduce a reconciliation and rapprochement between Pakistan and India, both of which are important business partners for BRI. Prime Minister Modi refused to come over twice. What do you think of a representation of heads of state? Only half of the number who benefit from BRI come over, because we have less than 70 countries and economies that would benefit from BRI, but only 37 representatives that come over. What do you think of the issue of representation?
Yes, there are not all the members along the Belt and Road countries come to participate in our initiative, but we should know that the initiative covers about 2/3 of all the developing countries, 2/3 of the population. So they should be aware of that. Yes. So maybe in the future, give it some time, because just one of the last 5 years is only the childhood of the Belt and Road. But we should give it some time. It will grow out.
Thank you so much. That's the end of this discussion about the influence of BRI and the issue of representation. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.